Space, the final frontier. For centuries, humanity has gazed at the stars with wonder, curiosity, and dreams of exploration. But today, space is no longer just a domain of discovery, it is becoming a battlefield. What was once a realm of scientific progress is now a contested ground for military dominance. The satellites we depend on for communication, navigation, and weather forecasting are also crucial assets in modern warfare. Nations are investing billions into space-based defense systems, turning what was once a peaceful expanse into a potential war zone. This shift did not happen overnight. The militarization of space has deep historical roots, stretching back to the Cold War. The competition between the United States and the Soviet Union was not just about missiles and nuclear warheads, it extended beyond our atmosphere. Each side sought to use space to gain a strategic advantage, believing that control of the skies meant control of the battlefield. The launch of Sputnik in 1957 sent shockwaves through the world, proving that the Soviet Union could place objects in orbit. The United States responded with rapid advancements in space technology, leading to the creation of NASA and a surge of funding into military space programs. This technological race laid the groundwork for everything we see today. Perhaps the most famous example of Cold War space militarization was the Strategic Defense Initiative, or SDI, nicknamed Star Wars. Proposed by President Ronald Reagan in the 1980s, SDI envisioned a network of space-based missile defense systems capable of intercepting incoming nuclear warheads. Though the project never fully materialized, the idea remained. Space was no longer just for exploration, it was a strategic asset in war. But the Cold War was only the beginning. As technology evolved, so did the means of waging war in space. The 21st century has brought new players, new threats, and an even more urgent race to control the cosmos. Today, multiple nations, including China, Russia, the United States, and emerging space powers like India, are actively developing space-based military technology. The goal? To ensure their dominance in the event of a future conflict. Military satellites are not just passive observers. They serve as communication hubs, missile guidance systems, and even early warning systems for potential attacks. Some satellites are capable of maneuvering, evading threats, or even disabling enemy satellites through electronic warfare. This growing militarization raises a critical question. Is space destined to become the next battlefield? With every new satellite launched, space becomes more crowded. And with it, the risks of conflict grow. If war extends into space, the consequences could be catastrophic, not just for military forces, but for everyday life on Earth. A single destroyed satellite could create thousands of pieces of debris, turning low Earth orbit into a minefield of high-speed projectiles. A full-scale space war could cripple global communication networks, disrupt economies, and even make space travel impossible for generations. This nightmare scenario is known as the Kessler syndrome, a chain reaction where one destroyed satellite creates debris that collides with others, eventually making space too hazardous for any future missions. If unchecked, we may soon find ourselves locked on Earth, unable to reach beyond our own atmosphere. Yet, despite these dangers, the race for military dominance in space shows no signs of slowing. The next phase of this competition is already unfolding, with new and more advanced weapons designed specifically for space warfare. the weapons of space are no longer science fiction. In the next chapter, we will explore the cutting-edge technologies that could determine the future of space warfare, from anti-satellite missiles and directed energy weapons to electronic warfare and cyber attacks on orbital assets. The silent war in space has already begun. The question is, who will emerge victorious? And at what cost? War in space is no longer a distant possibility. It is a reality being prepared for today. The world's major powers are developing weapons capable of targeting satellites, disabling enemy assets, and even controlling entire orbital regions. These weapons are not science fiction. They exist, and they are already being tested. The most well-known form of space warfare is anti-satellite missiles, or ASATs. These missiles, launched from the ground, can destroy satellites in orbit with pinpoint accuracy. But the consequences are severe. The destruction of a single satellite creates thousands of debris fragments, each traveling at speeds of over 27,000 kilometers per hour, fast enough to destroy another satellite on impact. ASAT tests have already taken place. In 2007, China destroyed one of its own weather satellites, creating a massive debris field that remains in orbit today. In 2021, Russia conducted a similar test, causing international outcry. These incidents demonstrate the devastating effects of space warfare, not just for military assets, but for all space activity. But missiles are not the only weapons being developed for space. More advanced and subtle methods are emerging, with some capable of disabling satellites without a single explosion. One of the most concerning developments is directed energy weapons, high-powered lasers capable of blinding or destroying enemy satellites. Unlike missiles, lasers do not leave behind debris. A single shot can overheat or disable a satellite's sensors, rendering it useless without anyone knowing who was responsible. The United States, Russia, and China are all developing laser systems capable of targeting satellites. These weapons could allow a nation to cripple an enemy's communication and surveillance networks in seconds, all without a formal declaration of war. Beyond physical attacks, space warfare is also entering the digital realm. Cyber warfare in space is a growing threat. Hacking a satellite is often easier than destroying it, and the effects can be just as devastating. By taking control of an enemy satellite, a hacker could intercept classified communications, disable navigation systems, or even redirect a satellite into a collision course. In 2022, reports surfaced that Russian-backed hackers attempted to disrupt satellite communications in Ukraine. This marked a turning point in modern warfare, proving that space assets are not just vulnerable to missiles and lasers, but to silent, invisible cyber attacks. But perhaps the most chilling prospect is the weaponization of space itself. Nations are considering deploying weapons directly into orbit: hypersonic glide vehicles, kinetic bombardment systems, and even autonomous attack satellites. One particularly controversial idea is rods from God, a theoretical weapon involving tungsten rods dropped from orbit at hypersonic speeds. The impact would be equivalent to a nuclear explosion, but without radiation, making it a devastating yet politically acceptable weapon. The idea may sound extreme, but in the world of military strategy, nothing is off the table. As nations push the limits of space-based weaponry, we must ask, are we on the verge of turning space into a battlefield? The world's superpowers claim they are only developing these weapons for defensive purposes. But history has shown that when powerful weapons exist, it is only a matter of time before they are used. The final frontier is no longer just about exploration. It is about power, control, and the ability to strike anywhere at any time. The question is, can space remain peaceful, or has the next great war already begun? For centuries, space was seen as a symbol of human progress, a frontier of discovery, cooperation, and scientific achievement. But today, it is at a crossroads. Nations are faced with a critical choice. Will space remain a realm of peaceful exploration, or will it become the next battlefield? The stakes are higher than ever. The consequences of a space war would not be limited to orbit. A conflict in space could disrupt global communications, collapse financial markets, and plunge the world into chaos. Imagine a world where GPS no longer works, where aircraft lose navigation, financial transactions freeze, and emergency services are cut off. Modern society depends on space more than we realize. The moment war extends beyond Earth, it won't just be soldiers who suffer, it will be everyone. And yet, despite these dangers, the militarization of space continues. Treaties meant to prevent space conflict are growing weaker as nations prioritize their own security over global stability. The Outer Space Treaty of 1967 was once a cornerstone of international law, banning weapons of mass destruction in space. But it never accounted for modern threats like anti-satellite missiles, cyber warfare, and energy-based weapons. Today, some argue that the treaty is outdated, incapable of stopping the new arms race in space. Others believe it is our last hope for preventing a catastrophe. The divide is clear. Some countries push for new treaties to prevent war in space. Others, however, hesitate, fearful that limiting their military capabilities will leave them vulnerable. Meanwhile, private corporations are becoming key players in space. Companies like SpaceX, Blue Origin, and others are launching more satellites than entire nations. As private industry expands, the question becomes, who truly controls space? Governments? Corporations? Or something else entirely? And what about morality? The idea of weaponizing space goes against the very principles that inspired humanity to reach for the stars. Space exploration was once about unity, about discovering the unknown, pushing boundaries, and inspiring future generations. If we turn space into a battlefield, what will we lose? But the reality is, the race has already begun. Governments, militaries, and corporations are preparing for a future where dominance in space means dominance on Earth. The silent war in space may soon become an open conflict. And when that day comes, the world will have to ask, is this the future we want? Or is there still time to change course? The future of space is uncertain. But one thing is clear, whatever happens next will define the course of human history. Which information did you find most surprising? Don't forget to tell us in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more great information about space.